Alright, so I did my research project about how coaches affect like the success of teams and athletes. So just real quick, I want to see how many people have at any point in their life played like a youth sport or something on a team. So probably most of us, maybe all of us. So the majority of people have played the sports before, been on a team, so they've dealt with a coach. And when you're a kid, it makes sense. Like coaches are there, they're teaching you how to play the game, and you're getting better. And it starts to, when I started thinking about like professional athletes and even like college athletes, like they already know how to play the game. They're already like, they practice and stuff and they get better. So what exactly does a professional coach do? So that's what I wanted to research. And then also how like, do they have a direct effect on like how teams play? Like obviously athletes have like the most effect, they're the ones actually playing and stuff. So I wanted to research that. So the opposing side, people aren't really arguing that coaches aren't needed. It's mostly the main argument is whether coaches are more or less interchangeable. Like as long as like you have a coach and they have everyone on the same page, your team, it's just based on the talent on your roster, how well players play. And so that's why coaches are important for that. But then also it's hard to prove the value of a coach because really the only way you can see is just how successful their team is. And that mostly reflects on the athletes themselves, like win-loss records and stuff. So it's really hard to like analytically prove the value of a coach. And so the main example that people are using against this is like the Warriors. I mean, the last few seasons, Golden State Warriors have been like one of the best teams and had one of the best assembled rosters. And the main example is their head coach, Steve Kerr, he's a well-respected coach, and he's considered to be pretty good. But there's twice in the last few years where he's taken a leave of absence, and he was covered by these other coaches, Luke Walton and Mike Brown. And both of them, the teams played just as good, maybe even better, without their head coach. Though the first one, Walton, they had a 24-0 start, which is record-breaking, and the other one, they started 12-0 in the playoffs. So their team, like is used to prove that players, like the coach, it doesn't matter who the coach was, but players just, they have a good enough team that it doesn't really matter. And then for the favoring side, they argue that coaches have a direct effect on the outcome of the game. The two factors that they look at to help prove, that coaches have, direct effect, that they are coaching tenure, which is like how long they've been coaching, usually with the same team. And then also other things that can't be measured analytically, which is hard to prove, but the qualitative attributes. And so the main one is they talk about is the coach-athlete relationship. And so this video, this is a guy who was a former Olympic rower for an Australian team. He talks about the importance of the coach-athlete relationship.
Key qualities was athlete self-awareness and the coach-athlete relationship. And out of those two key qualities, the coach-athlete relationship was an absolute non-negotiable. So if you have a productive relationship with your coach, if you understand them well, you know how they communicate, you understand their expectations, you know what type of environment they're creating for you as an athlete, you're more likely to have a quality relationship. And it works the same in reverse. If an athlete understands their coach, if they understand the way they communicate, if they understand how that coach likes to create an environment for that athlete, you're going to have a more effective and predictable environment in which to function. And that helps in terms of developing a quality relationship. If either of those two parties don't feel like there is mutual trust and respect, the relationship is usually poor. And as a result, motivation is impacted, the level of engagement, which is the degree to which your heart and mind is captured in what you're doing, is going to suffer. And as a result, performance declines. Every season we see impacts of this around the world in all of our professional football codes, where one athlete can leave one team, having been unsuccessful in this place, transfer to a new club, have a new coach, develop a much more high-quality relationship, and perform better as a result. That's a great example of a coach-athlete relationship of a high quality, resulting in an improved performance.
Okay, so that guy, he was a former Olympic athlete, and now he's like a consultant, and he helps other Olympic athletes, and he's just advocating for like that if you're the better the relationship between the coach and the athlete, they can get a better performance and better results. And then this graph shows, this is specifically NBA coaches, so on the bottom this shows the same consecutive season, so it's with a coach has stayed with the same team, and then on this side shows how it affects the team, like how they play. So it's called coaching win shares. It's a little bit of a confusing stat, but mainly it's just if it's above 0, then the coach has more of a positive effect, whereas negative. So as you expect, it starts off kind of low, and overall there's like a few spikes and dips, but has a positive trend. And so it just shows like this is another way to prove that like longer coaches with the team, that it actually does have a positive effect. So coaches really do can affect the results of games. And then another interesting stat that I found was that the average, and this is again just with NBA, but average time a coach is on a team is 2.4 seasons. And then if you look after the second season, there's usually a slight dip. And so a lot of times I think coaches are fired maybe like prematurely, whether they have slightly worse results, and really, as like the trend shows, it'll be more positive if you stick it out. So yeah, and then this is another, I'll go through this pretty fast, but this is so this was an entire analytics report. This was in 2019 about they were just trying to find the effect of coaches on like the direct effects, like points scored and allowed on teams. And so it's pretty long and kind of confusing, but some of the graphs at the end are this one. This one is just showing the ones on the left, farther on the left, coaches have more of an impact on the results of the game. So college basketball, college football, which would make more sense because in college, athletes are still learning, getting better. And then as it goes across, I think it goes baseball and then football and then basketball and then hockey is the last one. And then another one is this one was with, it's like it's kind of the same one, but with NFL coaches. It's not consecutive seasons with the same team, but just as a coach gets better. And the study is talks a lot about Bill Belichick, who's the Patriots coach, and he's this red dot up here, and he's had almost 20 seasons, and so you can see that usually longer a coach coaches, the better effects they have. So yeah, and then I personally think that obviously coaches are essential to any team, and that it's more important to look at the qualitative attributes than the numbers and analytics to try to prove it. Just that coaches, again, the coach-athlete relationship and just how they get along with the team and stuff is more important. And I guess for a solution, I'd say teams should try to look for these characteristics at the beginning and then stick it out and invest more time into that coach to get better results long term, and don't just take a lot of stock in like slight ups and downs. And so just to conclude, coaches are important in that they can actually have a direct effect on the outcome of any given sports game or anything like that. So I think that that main thing is that coaches whose teams perform poorly, it's better to stick it out and they can gain experience and overall lead to more success. So yeah. Any questions?
So you think a coach has a bigger impact on a team sport like basketball or an individual sport like tennis?
I think definitely an individual sport, it would have more impact, because they're going to be a better, as like the guys in the Olympics. Obviously Olympics are more of a one-on-one thing, but they can have more of an impact because they have a better personal relationship, and relationship is really important to finding results. So that's what I think.
Do any players feel that coaches don't matter? Who's saying coaches don't matter?
Most of the argument, it's not really, players usually aren't very like, they're mostly concerned about like, they think that just players, like they are the ones that go out and get the results and stuff. So I think players aren't just saying like coaches don't matter, but a lot of times the conflict comes when they don't get along with coaches. And so that's why it's more important that coaches have a better relationship, because then there can be like conflict that can lead to poor results. So.
Is there like a standard by which coaches are evaluated?
There's not really. So this report that I pulled up, the analytics report, is like one of the first ones that tries to evaluate like coaches, because before it's mostly just been on team performance, which doesn't directly affect on the coach's performance. So there's not really a standard. So that's one of the first ones that's tried to evaluate it. So.
Do you think there's like certain sports, basketball's just an easy one because everyone knows basketball. Like LeBron James can play on any team and he'll win. Like you just saw it with the Lakers. Do you think a coach matters when you have that amount of skill? Because the Warriors had a bunch of other players that came in. So what do you think?
So I think that there's a point, like when you get to that level, like not even just professional level, but above professional, like best of the best, coaches don't matter as much, but I still think that the wrong coach in that situation, like, could have done poorly, so I still think that, because those coaches, like, that I mentioned that covered for, those leaves of absences, they weren't, like, considered the best coaches, but they were able to just fill in and get along with the players and just mostly get their point across. So I think that in those cases, coaches don't matter as much, but it's still important just to mostly, like, the athlete relationship, so yeah.
Thank you.